What is an indie game developer?
Yeah, and there's a lot of, let's call it controversy as to what that really means.
Mm,
I mean, there's been $100 million game budgets that were considered indie,
yeah.
but really it's just the capex on what it costs to
It's the
produce and
not
market.
AAA stuff. It's like not the stuff you see from Bethesda or Activision. It's
That's right.
everything else. So it's not the Hollywood studio level production game studios. It's the long tail of the other 98% of games made.
That's right. Yeah, and honestly, you can have an indie studio that is very efficient with their resources and the tools that are out there now with Unity, Unreal, Godot.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Ignite podcast. Today we're delighted to have Slava Heretz on the program. He's the founder and CEO of Camlann Games. Slava, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on, spending the time. Would love to get an intro from you for the audience.
Sure. Yeah, I'm founder and CEO of Camlann Games. Was born in Soviet Ukraine, 1989. Fell in love with gaming immediately, but my professional life took me in a very different direction from university up until the kind of mid 2010s. Took a few companies to profitable exits, and then really decided to take some of the learnings and skill sets that came out of that, 15 to 20 years of professional experience into my passion, which is gaming.
I love that. And that's why we initially connected. So you spent 15, 20 years in SaaS. I mean, tell us about what is Camlann Games and how did your background in finance and SaaS kind of help you do what you're doing now?
Yeah, I mean, everything that was absolutely critical to me from a thought process of how does a business start, grow, and survive was heavily, almost exclusively based on unit economics, especially how to get to positive unit economics. And so when I worked as basically a FP&A pro, which is basically your job is to figure out how to look at historical data about a company and then project into the future of where are we going in the next month, 6 months, year
What is
onward.
FP&A for folks that don't understand what that is?
Basically, what fractional or any CFO, but at the time I
Yeah.
was a fractional CFO, should be doing, and that was a huge value. There were actually very few folks that were taking that kind of, especially working with the early stage, mainly B2B, like pre-seed, seed, maximum Series A, B2B SaaS founders between the East Coast and West Coast, and kind of grew my, let's call it, market presence. And sort of, it was a unique value prop that I brought because a lot of folks were just looking at a more holistic view of a company. But when you look at levers that you can push and pull, especially in the SaaS space, and especially back then, there were very, very few MarTech, ad tech, sales tech, whatever tools. I mean, like late 2000s, early 2010s, who had heard of HubSpot? Thousands of household names in the cloud-based SaaS space, but
Yeah.
back then it was really in its infancy. And so being at the spearhead of bringing tools into the tech stack like that for the early stage founders was extremely, extremely powerful. And everything was just unit economics, just positive, like, are you getting 3 to 4x return on ad spend or return on marketing? Yes, push that lever up and keep working on it. If it's not working, let's think about what processes can be changed. Where in that funnel are things breaking down? Where can it be optimized? Interestingly, when I started doing validation and looking at the industry of gaming, especially indie gaming, which I had been part of the ecosystem of for, I mean, God, like really genuinely 35 years, but more formally, let's call it 10 to 15, around when Steam started to become popular and tools like Discord, for example, community building. Reddit was more started to like really grow, and you can really engage with the communities, large and small. Discovered a lot of challenges, but the easiest one to pinpoint and which really spoke to my background was the unit economics just didn't work. It was too hit driven. It's a 40-year-old industry and it's boom or bust still to this day. And there are precedents. There are some really savvy publishers and some really savvy studios that have kind of proved that that doesn't have to be the case. None of them were doing it at scale. And so I looked at what needed to be done to have basically consistent, repeatable, sustainable unit economics at scale, and then build a product like a HubSpot or an Apollo
Yeah.
or an Outreach.io to sort of fill that void where it's been historically hot lava. Other folks in the game have really avoided trying to make it happen. At the enterprise level, sure, there's a bunch of tools, but at the kind of SMB indie level, it just doesn't exist.
Yeah, I love that. So it's this classic verticalized MarTech kind of play. And you're calling out horizontal platforms like HubSpot, which did it really well. They started in SMB and kind of moved that market, I'd say. You know, they've built out a lot of functionality over the years. Why something for indie games? What's going on in indie games right now where you thought it was the right time for this?
One of our chief advisors is someone that I had my final conversation with in the summer of 2022 before really pulling the trigger and moving forward on creating and building this business. And that was a gentleman named Simon Carlis, who's still today an advisor. And that was a really critical meeting because we basically agreed to start to look at, we both knew that there was a huge imbalance in the supply and demand, especially within Steam. And there's a lot of data can be pulled from Steam to take a look at pre-release KPIs, kind of like hype and metrics, and then post-release KPIs, mainly sales conversions from those pre-release KPIs. And we looked at what genres and what types of games were doing well, kind of in the big data look at it, not just like, oh, here's one game that did well, here's one game that did, like you have to really do kind of a deep analysis and a lot of volume of data for this to be of interest. Built our IP pretty much off of that, meaning like we know which genres are currently and historically have been in high demand and which ones are going to be in the future based on trends and signals. And really the customer acquisition strategy is really based on let's set up our game marketing engine to really only be promoting those particular games and avoid the ones that are like oversaturated, high supply, low demand. We think it's about a $2 to $5 billion arbitrage opportunity. So there's a lot of demand that players have shown with their wallets and otherwise. Social chatter, Discord membership, Steam chatter. There's a lot of data points on how players behave, and you don't need like enterprise level capital to be able to do that. There's a lot of APIs and a lot of just like data flowing out there. And that was
Yeah.
sort of the foundation of how we came about the decision to make that the thesis of what the platform was going to be, because we knew we had to differentiate somehow. There's a ton of competition out there.
Yeah.
You can self-publish. There's other indie publishers. There are PR and marketing agencies, all mainly doing
Yeah.
manual touches on basically doing outreach to press and influencers, and then paid ad optimization is you hire someone for 200, 300K that's
Right.
theoretically an expert in that versus looking at the data and optimizing it automatically.
Yeah. So there's so many questions popping in my mind. One of which is, you know, as an indie game developer, define that for the audience. What is an indie game developer?
Yeah, and there's a lot of, let's call it controversy as to what that really means.
Mm,
I mean, there's been $100 million game budgets that were considered indie,
yeah.
but really it's just the capex on what it costs to
It's the
produce and
not
market.
AAA stuff. It's like not the stuff you see from Bethesda or you know, Activision. It's
That's right.
everything else. So it's not the Hollywood studio level production game studios. It's the long tail of the other 98% of games made.
That's right. Yeah, and honestly, you can have an indie studio that is very efficient with their resources and the tools that are out there now with Unity, Unreal, Godot. There's AI tools now that help development. There's a lot of resources that where small teams can be extremely efficient, cost, velocity, quality. And so you get a game like Unrecord, for example, which is basically photorealistic. And I would say, honestly, higher production value than any AAA game I've ever seen. Still indie. So
Yeah.
I think the easiest answer is if it's under 5 million production budget, that's definitely going to be indie. Anything higher is usually going to be considered like AA, kind of
Okay.
that weird in between where it's like, hey, we did really well with the previous game, or we signed with a publisher that wants to
Right.
like really blast this out of the water. And so folks kind of tier the indie studios and publishers, then up to AA, and then finally we get the AAA and now quadruple A.
Yeah.
These are just
And a lot of
massive.
folks don't know how massive video games are. I mean, games are way bigger than the movie industry in terms of just
Bigger than movie and music combined.
Yeah, I mean it's just absolutely huge. I mean these $40, $30 games really add up when there's, you know, billion people playing them around the world. So how does Camlann Games work?
So the easiest way to describe that is we're B to B to C. So that means we first have to sell to a potential customer. But what's neat is that the barrier to entry for a studio that's making a game to become a customer is extremely high. We're not looking to scale to 50,000, 100,000 games in studio. We're going to be we have to be very selective on who we bring in. So we actually act more like an investor. So the B2B side is very easy, especially now that we've shown some really strong early traction on both the titles that have released and our kind of pipeline of pre-release titles. And folks know it. There's a lot of public data, and developers and studios, especially in the indie space, are watching them like hawks. So if they're looking for an opportunity to work with a publisher that's doing something great, because discoverability and go-to-market has been one of two biggest challenges, the other one is funding, they're going to start taking notice. And so our inbound is way more than we can even take on right now. Where the challenge comes in is that B2C side. So we're responsible for actually, when they engage with our platform and with our team, it's the expectation is that the motions that you take by, let's call it, taking the natural language of the game. So info about the game, like basic info. What are the features? What are the hooks? How is it similar to other games in similar genres that have been popular? What's unique about it? I'll give you an example. Like Scent of Ashes is one of our flagship titles, and one of the best-selling indie games of all time is RimWorld. It's colony sim. It's 2D. It's like really ugly, but the gameplay is unbelievable, and it has a huge cult following. And this is a 3D version of it, where the pedigree of the team is folks that have worked on several mods for RimWorld. And so that's a lot of information that's extremely useful for us. Our team and platform captures it. And then in addition to info, there's obviously the visual assets, the screenshots of the game, GIFs, clips, trailers, combined with info plus those visual assets. That stuff is converted into PR digestible and advertising digestible content. So press releases, pitch automations to the press and the influencers that might be interested in the game. And then I think the most powerful, honestly, is the advertising optimization, because where the unit economics typically break down and where most of video game marketing spend happens is it within paid advertising through
Yeah.
platforms like Google, Facebook, TikTok, and Reddit. And usually what happens is ironically, in the industry, there's a lot of spend put into kind of like a spray and pray approach, meaning
Yeah.
usually it's massive, massive budgets, and you just try to get as many possible players engaged in discovering the game, versus at the indie level, that does not work if your conversion from lead to actual purchaser of the game. So you have to be extremely, extremely hyper targeted on who you're sending this out to,
Right.
whether it be in the influencer journalism space or like directly to the players via those social media ads. Because what oftentimes happens is you get like a critical mass in a AAA game and it hits, or you hit a critical mass and it doesn't hit. We saw that with a lot of games recently go both ways, and it's a really risky endeavor. Whereas
Yeah.
at the indie level, you kind of take the median of what you see over the course of like every year, 15 to 20,000 games release on Steam. So there's a lot of data out there. And if you just have enough at bats, you're going to hit that median. You're going to hit that bell curve in the long run. And so, yeah, sure, we'll have a couple of flops. Sure, we'll have a couple of hits, but everything will kind of go to that median. And if the unit economics are profitable, you hope that, and that's how we sell it. Like, we're like, hey, we're not going to be, maybe you'll have a hit, maybe you'll have a flop, but the biggest chance is that you'll just earn a positive ROI from spend that we actually provide. And this is why we're fundraising. This is why I had to bring in a substantial amount of capital to sort of test the thesis. And the folks are like, okay, great. So they have an opportunity to bring, say they have a successfully raised Kickstarter, or they have VC funding, or a lot of our studios are in Europe and places that are not in North America, where the government does invest in gaming quite substantially. That's something that is actually unique to the rest of the world. It almost never happens in the
Wow.
US or Canada. So a lot of these folks come in with their own budgets, and then we supplement it with ours. And that's why we're able to get probably the most important part of our business model, which is 30% rev share, which is like 3x better than industry. Industry is like at least 50%, sometimes 60%, 70%.
Wow. So what separates you guys from just a straight publisher or just a straight marketing agency for indie developers?
Yeah. So there's a lot of similarities, honestly. The contracts look identical. The numbers just are different. And the way that we engage with our studios is very different. The numbers, as I just mentioned, really, it's a really critical piece. That's a big needle mover. If someone sees 30% revenue share of their game sales and any IP revenue, so like merch and DLCs, soundtracks, hey, if it's a hit, maybe it'll be like a Fallout or other
Yeah.
TV licensing. We take all of that revenue. So like a
You're
publisher,
basically to almost take the position of a publisher, but you're kind of an AI
that's
powered,
correct.
tech enabled publisher that also has this marketing side of the house.
That's right. Yeah. And theoretically, most publishers should be doing marketing. So
Right.
when you say game publisher, they really should be doing it. There's very few publishers nowadays that are just providing funding and just let you figure it out on the marketing side.
Right.
So it
Publisher kind of
really,
acts as sort of the Hollywood studio in this model, which is like, okay, I'm going to invest in you guys to make this game, but also I'm going to help you take it to market. And then I'm almost like the agent in this relationship and invest tens of millions, hundreds of millions in their games. But they are good games and there is a business here. And if we could use AI and software to do this at scale, we could unlock a lot of value. Is that kind of the thesis?
that's exactly it. I mean, like in the startup world, there are way too many startups pitching to not enough funds.
Right. Yeah,
So
there's
it's
like
the same deal.
3,000 venture funds and that's all stages.
Yeah.
I don't know how many seed stage startup funds there are, a lot less. And there's 10,000 companies that get pre-series A funding. So it's definitely like there's a funnel there.
Yeah, exactly. Honestly, we partner with our competitors because there's so much overflow.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, hey, we didn't sign this deal, so are you interested in it? Because like we probably never will. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely, because they're looking for that 0.01%. We love the top 5%. If you're getting an A in class, we want you.
Yeah.
We don't need the A plus students every time. That's really how we're able to very early bring on a lot of games. And then our value prop is, yeah, we're just actually legitimately, versus historically, it's been, okay, we're going to put this budget in, you're going to make the game, we're going to market it. Maybe you'll be able to make enough money to make a second game or even continue update it. Here, it's like, if we hit 75% break even, we're doing our job, because that historically has not been the case. 98% of all games over the past 40 years have been commercial failures,
Wow.
meaning they just don't earn even up to what was spent on the marketing and the production.
And so the way you're kind of approaching it is you're putting almost your VC investor hat on and saying, okay, out of all these, I don't know how many tens of thousands of games are created every year, what are the top 5 or 10% we should work on that we can actually accelerate and
Mhm.
have positive ROAS, return on ad spend, and generates some pretty healthy annuities with that 30% rev share.
That's right, exactly. Most of these games don't require more than 100,000 to 150,000 to both produce and market. Forget just production, which historically has been, I think, on average somewhere in the 400 to 500K range for indie.
It's because all of it's become almost equity, like sweat equity now, because of platforms like Unity and Unreal Engine. The barrier
Right.
and all kinds of design libraries and things like that. The barriers to creating a game is increasingly breaking down, whereas AAA titles 10, 20 years ago would take teams of hundreds if not thousands of people to do all of the game engine and physics engine and maintenance and design and character building. And now you can have a ragtag group of a few people just get a a alpha beta version out there and see if people like it, and then kind of keep investing in it. How much of a success of a game just comes down to like just a better game, a better product? You said this early in the conversation. You said, I'm putting my investor hat on and trying to work with the best that I see. Like, is that just a kind of table stakes? You've got to have a good product to market it. No amount of marketing is going to make a game great, right?
That's correct. And what's difficult about your statement is everybody in gaming has their own perspective on what a good game is.
Mm.
So we don't really try to look at what a good game is from a traditional perspective, which has usually been kind of like, oh, this looks cool. That's neat. Great graphics, like very stylized, like neat features. If there's no demand for it, like you can make the sexiest Metroidvania and it'll be a 1 in 10,000 hit rate. Like Hollow Knight, yes, fine. That was
Really
like an
great game.
outlier. Great game,
And
outlier.
not an indie game though, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
That was an
yeah,
indie game. Wow.
oh yeah. Animal Well, that had a big following from a streamer, influencer turned publisher. So they had kind of a unique approach, but
Sometimes a
that
game
was
just kind of breaks through. It is a great game.
mhm, mhm.
And great game mechanics, and people just talk about it. Like word of mouth does count for a lot, and marketing, I think, just pours fuel on the fire, right? You got to have a fire there, which is a good product first. Why don't more game developers take advantage of the freemium model? What is that calculation when they're thinking about, okay, do I go free to play and go Fortnite, Rocket League, Apex Legends, that kind of, mass audience, pay for skins, pay for battle passes, things like that, versus, like I just paid for a game called Satisfactory, really awesome
Mhm.
game where you,
Also indie game.
that's an indie game, amazing game. You're just
Yeah.
building this factory on this alien planet, and you have to get
Mhm.
all it's like Minecraft for adults, but like a lot more complex. What goes through the game developers' minds? Because Satisfactory it's a $40 game,
That's right.
and it probably sold millions and millions of copies at this point because it
Yes.
has a huge following and it's a great game, really well built. Versus some other game that went free to play or freemium or why wouldn't Satisfactory, for instance, do their first hour of the game free and then you got to pay to continue the progression?
So it's really risky. It's way more expensive to do free to play user acquisition, not because it's difficult to get the players to come on, but you have to hit a very much larger critical mass of players playing for the monetization to work. So you need kind of a huge backing from like that's why typically only AAA does the live services free to play model. And what's interesting is that kind of getting inside my IP a little bit, NDA here, we would have signed a Satisfactory because we knew like if it was 3, 4 years ago, even if it was releasing today, like to early access, like
For years.
open world survival craft and automation is super high in demand. However, I would have never signed a Hollow Knight or an Animal Well, even though those games did hit, just by nature of if you did this 1,000 times, what is the percentage that a Satisfactory or like a game like Satisfactory will do fine versus what are the percentage of chance that a game like a Metroidvania, like a Hollow Knight, and it's insanely in favor of a Satisfactory game.
Mm,
Open world survival craft, base building, automation, those are all hugely underserved genres because they're harder to make. They're
yeah.
really hard to make, especially when it's co-op. So you get like a Valheim or a Pal World or whatever, these kind of like open world survival
Yeah.
craft co-op team.
Are they now maybe crossing into the AA territory given?
Definitely. Oh yeah. And that's probably why Satisfactory was able to get that like really high, super high fidelity, like almost AAA quality graphical fidelity on their game, even from initial early access, because
Yeah.
you know, they pitched the right team and they got probably a substantial budget to bring the game to
Okay,
early
so there is
access.
probably some publisher they partnered with that
Definitely, yeah.
said, "Hey,
Coffee Stain was behind them from the beginning.
got it."
And that's how it works. It's usually about a 12 to 24 month cycle before, maybe you have a little prototype or vertical slice made. You pitch it to, it's very similar to Startup World. You create a prototype, you get some early adopters
Yeah.
in terms of like people
Get
wishlisting
some
on Steam or whatever.
feedback, pivot a little
Yeah,
bit, iterate on your product a little bit.
that's right. And
Yeah.
then you pitch to the publisher. A lot of publishers will like to do something from absolute scratch because then your upside is much larger. You own a larger percent of the possible revenue. Generally, at least in the indie space, to kind of de-risk, you're gonna be more like a seed stage investor. You're
Yeah.
gonna be looking at games that have already validated a little bit, and that's where we're at. So we don't want them too far along. We don't want them
Yeah.
like a couple of months before release. We can't do too much because here's the biggest difference between e-commerce or B2B SaaS versus the video game and other entertainment world like music and film is that you're doing majority of your marketing pre-release. We cannot work with a game that's a post-release or even I'd say less than 3-4 months before scheduled release. And if we really like something, we will artificially push out the release date so we have more marketing beats to work on.
And why is that? Why just to build up pent up demand for it?
Yeah. I'd say the closest thing to non-gaming is a hype. Like remember what was it? Clubhouse? They just had this massive wish list. They just got all this hype during COVID, and they built up wish list, wait list.
Or Facebook did that too when they
Yeah,
launched.
Facebook, exactly.
Yeah, it's just like a long wait list. To like you got to know somebody to
That's
invite
right.
you.
That's
And
right. So consumer products tend to work well like that. Hollywood releases only work like that, and the gaming space is the same. What's neat though is if you do hit a good stride in the at release and the first month or so, you end up with a very, very nice what we call back catalog, which is like basically a steady recurring stream of new players because our marketplace partners, specifically Steam, will organically they're in the business of making money. So if they see a
right.
game selling well, they're going to keep promoting it. And we kind of know those thresholds. I won't say anything specific because it's sort of part of our
Yeah.
internal
Your
NDA
secret
IP,
sauce.
but
Yeah.
secret sauce. But yeah, it's part of
Yeah.
it.
That's interesting. So you're looking for the games that are launching 6 to 12 months so you can work with them to create the pent up demand. And then that way it's like pulling the bow back and releasing the arrow.
That's right.
The arrow is going to fly further. And then,
Exactly.
how do you think about viral loops inside of video games? They are inherently social in most cases. So they are inherently
Yeah.
viral. How do you know the virality, the potential of one of the ones you're going to work with?
That's a little bit of a soft skill. You have to know what mainly the influencer community is getting excited about, what's streamable. Usually games that have more streamability, and so there's always outliers. I've seen Paradox, for example, one of our competitors. They have some of the most boring games to watch on YouTube and Twitch. It's like, these very niche, historical grand strategies. And I love watching it because I happen to be a fan of that. But you take your average gamer and it's like snooze fest. So you take that sort of streamability with a grain of salt, but you can kind of see is this exciting? Can they play it with another streamer friend in sort of a fun, either cooperative or competitive way?
Among Us comes to mind, right?
But going back to Satisfactory, I
Yeah.
don't know if you saw the most recent couple trailers, but they really bring that to the forefront because it used to be Satisfactory used to be here's the building that you can do. So they would show the crafting and the base building components and the beautiful vistas and the creatures, whatever. But now they're leaning into the sort of hey, here are other players with you. They're running around in their suits, almost
I think
with no.
that's the kind of the magic of video games is you can traverse virtual worlds and accomplish things. It's kind of the future of humanity, I think, with AI and robotics increasingly building things and doing everything for us. I think the gaming industry is going to get even bigger because AI is going to generate more games. It's going to help more indie game developers build cooler experiences. And that barrier to creating that AA, AAA level games is precipitously dropping.
And you're going to have to keep in mind where the uncanny valley and the perception of AI as a part of a game, the role that it plays today, majority of the players, especially the older crowd, kind of between our age and the older Gen Z, really sensitive to AI right now. And so we're not interested today in signing any Gen AI made, meaning
You're
the
probably getting
tools.
pitched some though. You're probably seeing some.
Steam doesn't allow them, so you can't
Oh,
even get
really?
it you can get it on Epic Game Store, but Steam
Wow.
does not allow it. And so
They don't allow AI powered games?
AI NPCs, for example, and anything there's certain kind of no things that Steam does not like. They just recently changed their rule on some Gen AI stuff, but it's brand new. Like their opening up is brand new.
And these games take years to develop, right? And Gen AI really just came out a couple of years ago.
That's right.
And now it's just now probably getting powerful enough to power NPCs at a believable level.
Mhm.
inside games?
I think what would be really neat is, yes, to your point, the dialogues and the conversations and the outbursts, but also how they navigate the terrain. Because, you know, sometimes you want to play PvP against an actual player,
Right.
and sometimes you just don't want to deal with the like
The
toxic
trolling.
nature.
The PvP, to your point, just gets like there's cheaters and there's people
Hmm.
that play this game 10 hours a day and just
Hmm.
stomp on you all
Hmm.
like, and like we're casual players. We play an hour a
Right.
day, 2 hours a day, maybe. Sometimes we don't play for a week, and you go in there and it's like this level 55 player that has like 5,000 raids this wipe in the last like 4 months and just completely obliterates you. And it's just not fun.
Where it could be, my final point on that, where it could be interesting is that if you do play PvE, you expect a certain level of challenge. And so usually that's done historically in games by setting your difficulty level. But if you're able to kind of almost infinitely have, like kind of what you're talking about in Rocket League, you play enough matches and you're just naturally, you get like a whatever, what do they call it in chess, that ranking?
Yeah, diamond or platinum or yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So where the Gen I could come into play for games across the board is, as you continue to play PvE matches, you don't have to set your own difficulty levels. Now, the mechanics of the NPCs react to your ranking, and that Gen AI improves
Yeah,
their
it makes it
whatever
just hard enough to
aim.
be fun, but not so
That's right.
hard that you keep getting your head blown off.
How
We're
they take cover, how they
yeah.
maneuver, because it's very difficult to do that kind of coding without Gen AI right now. Like
Well,
that's the
that's
biggest
the problem
difference.
with the PVE mode is in some areas of Escape from Tarkov, it's gotten impossible. And it's just like, well, they've hard coded something into the game. It's just
Correct.
so hard.
That's right.
And that's like a really good example of how AI should be, and just simple algorithms really should be able to figure out like, hey, this guy keeps dying in the same location. Maybe we just tone it down a bit.
But it needs to learn.
Yeah, it needs to learn. Yeah. It's like games that learn. It's like marketing that learns. That was our phrase. And it was logistical regression at scale, but it was definitely marketing that learned. Speaking of marketing, what is a good return on ad spend? As you start kind of marketing these games, you're building up the pent up demand. What are you how are you measuring that? Like, and at what point is it saturated? And you're like, I can't squeeze any more lemon out of this, lemon juice out of
So
this.
what I'm going to say is going to be kind of universally potentially understood, but definitely if there are any indie game developers watching that have attempted to release an indie game in the past, generally your industry average is going to be about $3 to $5 of ad spend per wish list. And so a wish list is like a lead, someone who has kind of
Yeah.
raised their hand on the
Somebody said, I
marketplace.
want to know when this comes out. Yeah.
That's right, exactly. And so what's neat is through the automations that we run and obviously the types of games that we sign, with a combination of the organic coverage that we get from the press and from the streamers and the influencers, our average right now is under $1. So like if you were to ask someone what are normal cost per lead, cost per purchase, I would say cost per lead is, yeah, sure, $3 to $4. And then your cost per purchase is, in the month one, it'll probably convert 20% of that. So multiply that by five. So you're somewhere in the
Mm.
$10, $12. And that's why the unit economics never work, because typically your indie games are going to be $15, $20. Steam takes a cut. There's taxes. Different countries have different conversion rates. So
Yeah.
you're almost never profitable. So that's why unit economics is the most critical component to what we're doing. It's got to be positive or else it just doesn't work. There's too many pigs at the trough for that to be the case. And Steam knows their kind of dominance in the indie space. So
Yeah.
they'll never go like the Epic Game Store and go 15%. They just know we're taking 30%. So you have to kind of beat that system.
That's a really interesting point that you're making, which a lot of marketplace models have been criticized for, especially the Play Store and the Apple iOS, and with that 30% take. And it seems that Steam's holding fast at that. They're going to be like, hey, no, we're the best game in town. If you want to distribute your game, it's 30%.
And don't get me wrong, we do publish and distribute to all the major marketplaces. So Steam, Epic Game Store, GOG, which is CD Projekt Red's Good Old Games. And then
Yep.
there's partners, regional partners and bundle partners like Humble Bundle. In East Asia, there's something called Haybox. In South America, it's called Nuvem. So there's ways to kind of connect
Yeah.
distribution partners to those marketplaces. But at the end of the day, you still have to purchase it from one of those three major ones. Itch.io is kind of a player, but it's more like an open source version. Like it's kind of like just, post your game, someone can maybe download it, check it out for free, but I wouldn't call it a marketplace. It's more of just like YouTube
Yeah.
for games or something. Just like throw your thing up there, see what happens.
Well, Steam effectively has a free trial, right? Because they'll usually let you return the game as long as you haven't played it for more than 2 hours
Mhm.
and owned it for more than 2 weeks. I think is kind of
That's right. Yep,
their hard and fast rule. So
that's exactly it.
effectively there's a free trial. Like download a game, pay the $40. If you end up playing it more than 2 hours, like great. I've noticed that there seems to be a studio model on the movie side, right? We just Beetlejuice, don't say it a third time. We just watched that for Halloween. But you could pay the $25 to watch it at home. Obviously, just a few weeks ago, you could only see it in the theaters. Now you can pay the $25 to watch it at home. You basically buy the movie.
Mm.
And then there's the $5 or $6 rent it for 48-hour thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually it just ends up on a streaming service somewhere. Is the same thing kind of happening in games in a parallel way? Like you release it on Steam, you charge the $40-$50, and then eventually it goes on sale. And then eventually there's, maybe some expansion packs you can buy and stuff. But then eventually, does it all just end up on like Xbox Game Pass someday? And maybe you can comment on the Game Pass generally.
So I don't know if you remember the history of Steam when Valve tried to release Half-Life 2. They created their own proprietary marketplace that basically digital distribution of digital games did not exist back in whatever it was, late 2000s. And so when it started to accept third-party publishers to post games there, it was literally the bargain basement. It was like you go to a GameStop and
Yeah.
it's hiding in 5 back rooms or whatever. Those are the kind of games.
It's like the
And then
regular Nintendo games when Super Nintendo's been out for a few years. It's just like sitting in the corner
exactly,
collecting
exactly,
dust. Yeah.
exactly. So that was the origins. And then as it became more mainstream and more kind of the standard way for, people are lazy. They don't want to go out to a store and buy games.
Yeah.
Even if you technically don't own them, which is true. On Steam, you just are licensing it. But the convenience is just so amazing that people are willing
Right.
to do it. And so it became kind of like the standard place. And so the pricing on Steam, what you generally see is a retail release, maybe 10-15% off for the first like week or so. And then what generally publishers do for best practice is keep iterating the discount, steepening the discounts over time, and then kind of matching up a really steep discount if there's a number two like a sequel coming out or a big expansion or some kind of additional content. You
Mm.
sometimes see like 75-80% off of a game, but then it's like, ooh, look, I can get the base game 80% off, but here's this $10 DLC or something. And so that's been really the main way that folks monetize and kind of like are able to still capture value even when you're 2, 3, 4, 5 years into the game's life cycle, is like all that kind of long tail stuff that adds on. And that's why that back catalog management is so important and something that we really do. And like a lot of our automations are setting them up so that you don't really have to.
Yeah, it reminds me of marketing automation 15 years ago. I used to work at Vertical Response. Janine, the founder, her insight was, she worked at enterprise email systems. So she understood the space and she understood that it was kind of coming down out of the enterprise into the SMB, right? And the same way, Camlann Games is kind of addressing this. The AAA publishers have all these systems, right? They have in-house people doing all this stuff. I remember actually interviewing at EA back when I was deep in AI product management. They were interviewing me to be an AI PM on their, I think, demand gen side, basically kind of the distribution side for games back in the Bay Area. So these big publishers have these systems. They have the AI. They have all this marketing. And so you're basically empowering the indie game developers, the at least the top 5 or 10% of them, to have to play with the big boys, so to speak, and find that distribution using these AI powered systems. Would you say that's correct? Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And even if you have someone savvy on your team that like can do this all manually at a studio, it's not really beneficial because you probably don't know how to optimize that. For a great example is I'd say 9 out of 10 of the games that we sign have very unoptimized Steam pages. So the wrong Steam tags tied to their game, they're not ordering their features and hooks and information in the right way. They're not adding something that's really impactful, which is GIFs. When there's a GIF on a Steam page, there's like X number of conversion. Like we just have the data on that stuff.
Yeah.
And they're not doing it.
Don't
So
give
even
away
if
too much of your secret sauce. Yeah.
honestly,
But you could look at all this with algorithms, AI, and software and basically just optimize this at scale.
Yeah. I mean, even if like every single indie studio and publisher was watching this video, I think the execution is so difficult because there's a lot of components to this that I'm not sure anyone could pull it off.
Well, yeah, and I think you're uncovering something that is a big part of our thesis when we invest in B2B SaaS companies like yours, and is there's so many things out there that you can pay somebody a fraction of the cost of what it would cost to do it in-house, and they'll do it, 5 to 10 times better than you can, right? So hiring experts, software platforms, AI-powered platforms to do the undifferentiated heavy lifting of stuff that you're just not good at. If you're a game developer, you're probably not good at marketing. It's probably pretty rare that you're both really good at making awesome games and really good at marketing them. And so it makes sense that, there would be a platform like yours that comes in and solves that problem for them. So kind of looking out in the next 5 or 10 years, what do you see for Camlann Games and kind of the indie market generally?
So usually, historically, what's happened is the publishers that get the most hyped are the ones that drop these like epically massive hits. Everyone knows Devolver Digital, they have Cult of the Lamb, they have a bunch of other mega hits. What I really hope will happen very soon is that the indie community will see, oh, here's Camlann, and they don't have a ton of like mega hits, but like, holy moly, what a sustain, like, they haven't had a single game that's sold fewer than 20,000 copies or something like that, which if you talk to an indie developer and you tell them 10, 20,000 copies, they're going to get really excited.
Yeah.
99% of the time. Sure, everyone wants to make $1 bajillion, but that's just not realistic. So hopefully we get to a point where the market knows this is a platform that de-risks like the entry into a historically extremely risky business. And I think that'll get a lot of folks off their butts, start making more games, and then we can help them, make the good one.
Yeah, I love that. Well, let's switch to a rapid fire to kind of wrap up. What's the first video game you ever played?
Super Mario Bros. On Nintendo, but PC Civilization 1.
Ooh, I love Civilization. That's another one. I recently found out Mark Zuckerberg is like, I'm grandmaster status of Civ, is what he said. He has like thousands of hours into the game. And that makes sense. Like he's such a nerd and I'm such a nerd. Like I love Civ. That's like my other satisfactory like game that I'll just spend like.
Which one? 4, 5, 6?
I've definitely played a lot of 4, 5, and 6. I think I liked 4 the most. I'm going to jump back into that eventually. What's your favorite indie game of all time?
Ooh, Subnautica. It's just so good.
Yeah.
So
it's a good game.
It's actually a lot like Satisfactory, but underwater.
Yeah. Yeah, basically. It's like Minecraft underwater. What's the most underrated aspect of running a game publishing platform like yours?
Have you ever seen Wayne's World?
Yeah, of course.
Remember when they see Alice Cooper and they're like, we're not worthy.
Yeah.
I have that happen to me all the time. Like, because the industry is so small and so niche, there's like no like celebrities really, but if you've like known certain people that are like industry veterans and you've been following them for many years and then you just like get to meet them.
Just hang out with them.
You just hang out with them.
Oh yeah, I've had stories like this now in VC. That's where I'll just meet a famous VC and I'm like, wow, I can't believe I'm talking to you right now. I've been following you for 10 years and it's just amazing. It's like surreal to like meet your heroes. Speaking of which, what is a game studio you would love to work with?
Great question. Honestly, the folks behind Dwarf Fortress, they made an ASCII game that just blew up like no other. It's just a bunch of like, really nerdy, couple of nerdy dudes. And they finally
the paperclip game? Where you're like creating basically a paperclip factory?
No. It's like literally running what it would be like to run a colony of dwarves, like, from Lord of the Rings or something. It's so insanely detailed. I just would A, want to get inside their head, and B, if they were to create a follow-up title, it would be just as huge. So originally started it as like, forget 2D. This was literally ASCII characters, like the old rogue.
It's 2D ASCII graphics.
And then when they realized they needed to release it, they got a publisher and they got some funding and they put it on Steam in a little bit more improved graphical fidelity.
So ASCII, for anybody listening, is basically when you create artwork using just the characters from basically what you can find on the keyboard.
Yep.
So
exactly.
if you've ever seen somebody send you like a little heart and it's like just a bunch of,
slashes and
slashes
exactly.
and yeah. So they created a whole game with that artwork,
basically
with ASCII artwork.
And one of the original video game, like at least PC style, was Rogue, which was what Diablo and a lot of RPGs were based off of. But it was that ASCII art, like you were the character A, and then the enemies were numbers. Your sword did not exist. It was just you hit down or left on the arrow keys on your keyboard, and it just smashed and made like a PC beep noise, like when your computer crashes.
I got to check out that game. What's the best gaming soundtrack to listen to while working?
I'm a huge cyberpunk nerd.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
And one of my favorite modern AAA games, let's call them, is Cyberpunk 2077. So if I'm like really deep into a work session, I'll put that soundtrack on.
That
It's
game
pretty
is
aggressive.
epic level. Just a insane detail and open world concept game that it's just hard to explain unless you play it with all the bionic implants you can get, and it's just so cool. What a cool game. What is the biggest indie game trend in the next 5 years?
Here's the problem right now. Like I mentioned earlier, too many games get released into oversaturated genres that nobody cares about. Hopefully, we're the driver of the trend to actually get more of the games that people actually do want. So I think what we're going to see more of is people opening their wallets up to more. A16Z just released some data on this, where our generation, like the older generation, typically picks one game and they play it for like ever, one or two games. Whereas Gen Alpha, Gen Z, some of the younger crowd, like we're seeing more data that they're interested to discover and buy more games, which that historically has not been the mindset. And I think that's going to be a really positive tailwind for us. And also, I just love the concept of more indie developers getting more love. That's all this is all about. It's just kind of democratizing the ability to actually make games.
Yeah, I love that. If not gaming, what industry would you be disrupting?
VC. If I had a wad of money or was able to raise a fund, oh man,
what would you change about VC? I'm curious. Asking as somebody asking for a friend.
More transparency. I like funds that are just like, this is the sector we invest in, this is the stage, this is pretty much exactly the kind of founders that we look for, and our thesis, and we don't really deviate too much from it, because I think oftentimes there's only so many hours in a day and so many hours in someone's life. If you're just like pitching ad nauseum without any real insight into whether this is even a fit.
Well, it's tough for you because you kind of fall in between two industries. So it probably takes a VC like me who straddles both of those industries to kind of see the potential. And you're not quite a gaming investment, but you're not quite a B2B SaaS investment. You're kind of like a hybrid. I think it's hard for you to find that VC fit. I think, you mentioned A16Z, they definitely have a big gaming practice as well. I mean, what are they investing in?
So they like, you actually can basically have a lot of insight into it in their posting on the type of stuff that we're looking for Speedrun, this most recent cohort. AI infrastructure. They like social, like they're really excited about studios that are building natively on Discord, like games specifically. Those are, that's like kind of like the mobile space. It's like pretty hyper casual.
So they're kind of looking at picks and shovels kind of plays in gaming, basically.
But very specific kind of picks and shovels. Like we're technically picks and shovels, but we're not really a fit for them because it's called like, I don't know, traditional or something. Because like you mentioned, we're technically a publisher and we're technically B2B SaaS. Neither of those things are really exciting for them. They're looking for like tools that are very specific to, how do we 10x the speed of a development cycle? Something that our customers would use. Like that's why I'm very closely following what A16Z and Speedrun is doing, because I want to see what tools are coming out of that.
Right.
But them investing in this probably does not make any sense, at least on the speedrun side, like maybe down the road.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Should we call this episode Ignite Startups or Ignite Gaming?
Both. Ignite.
Startup Gaming?
Startup Gaming.
Yeah, gaming startups, Ignite Gaming Startups. Maybe that's what we'll call it, because it is a very particular niche kind of episode. We always try to title it something like that: Ignite Startups, Ignite VC, Ignite Marketing, Ignite Growth, I think is what I classify those at. Anyway, describe Camlann Games in one word.
Discover.
I love that. And where can folks interested in talking to you, either VCs or gaming publishers, get in touch with you?
Email or Discord. If you're really living in our world, we spend 99% of our time on Discord. Sir Slava is my username, as the other friend. Or email is great as well. Slava at Camlann Games.
Well, thank you, Slava, for coming on. It was a really fun conversation.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian.